Good afternoon. My name is Rain Russell, and this is WBCR Bloomfield College Radio. Today, I'll be representing Nkululeko, a nonprofit organization that works to help underprivileged students in South Africa advance educationally from grade 8 through 12 to get into university. I will be interviewing Esther Dillard, a communications professor at Bloomfield College, on Black Lives Matter, but more specifically, Black Education Matters. So, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's good to see you. Good to hear you.
Yeah, it's so weird, you know, doing this through a computer screen instead of in person, but you know.
Yeah, that's the way it is as far as COVID is concerned. And I think that it's like the smart way at this point. Bloomfield College is currently shut down for a period of time because of a number of outbreaks on the campus. So this is really something that has to be done just for your safety and other students' safety. And hopefully within a few days, it'll all go back to normal where people can at least talk to each other in person for a little while, at least. Socially distant, yes.
Yes, yes. Um, to kick things off, I do want to ask, what was school like for you growing up, and what, if any, challenges did you face?
Well, I would say I grew up in a household that, really felt, I feel, was like a working class family on the edge of middle class. So, most people in that category are one check or two checks away from having an issue. So that was kind of the way I was. My dad worked for the New York State Health Department as an administrator. He ran a number of health clinics. He got the job with New York State Health Department after getting his master's degree at SUNY Buffalo. And getting to that level really was a big thing for my family and his family. Because he grew up part of his life in Flint, Michigan, and in the Black Bottom section of Detroit, Michigan. I don't know whether you know anything about Black Bottom, but it's a very economically challenged, poor area. And my dad often told me stories about being poor. He would often joke. He says he wasn't poor; he was po with no R. That's because, and it was very difficult for his family. And he often told me stories that one of his relatives, when he was young, 4 or 5, thought he wasn't going to go amount to anything. Well, be careful what you say to little kids. Because my dad at that moment thought to himself, I'll outdo you and everybody else here. And he told me that because they moved around a lot, he and his dad and his mom, a lot, he only got about an 8th grade education and decided he wanted to go into the army because he figured if he survived going through in the Vietnam era, that they pay for his education. Well, I'm not sure why he picked one of the most dangerous jobs in the army, jumping out of airplanes. He on a practice jump, his parachute got caught up on the way down, and he ended up coming down on his leg too fast and snapped it in several places. So they took him to hospital. He's had to heal there, the army hospital, and he managed to heal for months in the hospital and never saw combat. So when he got out of the army, he headed into Buffalo, my hometown where I was born, and worked 2 jobs to get into SUNY Buffalo through the night school. Later, he met my mom, volunteering with an adult reading program. Both of them were teachers for the program. And after they got married, they had me. And then I was sent to what was called at the time Martin Luther Christian School in Eggertsville. It was a suburb of Buffalo, New York. It was predominantly white in the suburbs, but the school, they had a commitment to try to include or be inclusionary of minorities. So they had a good presence of African American students. So my experience was that teachers were committed to challenging students and encouraging them to adopt Christian values. And that's something my parents wanted me to have, since my dad eventually worked and became a minister in my mom's home church, and eventually became the pastor of that church. So I was a PK, preacher's kid. Um, we lived a modest life in the beginning, in a flat above the church. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, which eventually became a licensed foster parent. And through my years growing up, they took in more than 30 foster kids, legally adopting 4 kids during those years. And I eventually went to a Christian high school, this one Baptist, and their curriculum focused the basics on the basics, and on big focus on Bible studies and memorizing long passages of scriptures. And I begged my mom after my junior year, when I got to my junior year, to leave for my senior year and attend a public school, Bennett High School, to experience what I felt like was missing, a presence of African-American students. I really felt like, unlike Martin Luther Christian School, this school was predominantly white.
Mm-hmm.
For 2 out of the 3 years, I was one of 3 Black students in the school. I remember at one point, I was the only Black student in the school for one point, when a number of people maybe have graduated or left. And I definitely was the only Black student in the classroom a lot of times. So that can be pretty intimidating and awkward when it comes with discussions, when it comes to race and current events. And I really got tired of being put on the spot to defend, all Black people when it came to some conversations and challenges. The challenges really weren't that I was afraid for my life or anything. No one threatened me in that way. It was just constantly feeling scrutinized for what you wore, how you spoke, why you did certain things. And when I would take 3 buses back to the east side of Buffalo, living on Box Street, where I grew up, I would see my neighbors, and kids often made me feel out of place in my own neighborhood, saying I talked too white. And I often felt like I didn't belong on either side. With the Black folks, I wasn't Black enough. And of course, I was the prissy preacher's kid who, could quote scriptures and rattle off all 66 books of the Bible in less than 60 seconds. So I wasn't like the girl to hang out with. So challenges in high school were really, we moved from Box Street to Main Street, which was in North Buffalo near Bennett High. My challenges in high school were really just finding friends, finding out who I was. When I finally went to SUNY Buffalo and later Syracuse for my grad degree, I think I found more of who I was than I did in high school, because I had more freedom to choose what I wanted to do, what I wanted to read, what I wanted to like, and things like that. And I really liked interviewing people. I really was pretty quick when it came to technical production. And so I kind of turned to television and radio, because it seemed like that's what I really wanted to pursue, and that it really fit for me. And I honestly like both. And that's kind of like my little story in a capsule of what I, as far as my experiences in school.
That's really, really, really like crazy. I can only imagine what it's like to be. I mean, like I know what it's like to be one of the only people of color in a setting. Like that happened to me when I went away, when I went to London, and like the program, it was pretty much 90%, white people, and then it was like a small portion, you could probably count on like both hands, of people of color, and that includes like both Black people, Hispanic people, Latino, whatever, just that little portion. So you feel that difference of being the other, and yeah. So I definitely can relate to that, but that's very, very crazy. But do you believe, like with that background, that it's harder for students of color to find motivation in trying to complete school when you're constantly feeling like other, or you're constantly being given the short end?
Well, I guess yes, because some students have more pressures. I don't know. I think that often it really depends on who you have in your circle, who is in your corner to help motivate you. Um, Many of the kids, I'm thinking, they may have a family member who's, you know, kind of like they have that background where they can encourage them that I've been through this, you can do this, and they can give you that encouragement. But some kids may not have that, you know, they may not have that kind of structure for them. So being motivated to finish their studies, and to do what they need to do when it comes to their studies, it may be really, really difficult for them because they just don't have that kind of support. So I think that really depends on the student. For me, I had a dad who worked his behind off to go to college, and he had nobody in his family had gone to college. Although his dad was very intelligent, he, you know, for grandpa, his generation, to get into college, unless you went to an HBCU down south, likely you did not get in to any, they weren't going to let you in, you're not going to get there. So it was, getting a good education was extremely important to my dad, and he pushed that I would go to college. Now many students don't have that kind of, their parents may not have gone to college. They're working class parents, they're just trying to make ends meet. They're thinking that, you know, it might be better for you to do some work so you can bring in some cash so we can pay this rent and have some food in the house and the refrigerator. So that may be something more important for them. So I'm sure that students are grappling with that, when you feel like you're the other, on top of it, because you got home that's got pressure and things going on, and then you're going to have school with trying to finish all your studies and do everything, and then you feel not as comfortable in the space. And I hope that Bloomfield College at least gives you that comfort in the space, you know, so that you feel that you can do it, you know, given the right direction by some of the instructors, you know, at the college.
Yeah, I definitely think a very few number of professors and like staff are very instrumental in a lot of the students' like lives, as far as like helping them, you know, progress, or helping them stay at least motivated enough to keep going, even though they have so much going on. But it is very, very difficult, I would say, to have that motivation to begin with.
Yeah, and this pandemic has really made it really harder for students because, you know, they have so many pressures onto not just doing your studies, but getting online. You know, homes are with 2 or 3 generations in the house. You have grandma, you have auntie in the same house. You got mom and dad, sister and brother, everybody all jammed in one top of on top of each other, and then you throw unemployment and the issues into the mix. If you're a parent or somebody is an essential worker, then you're worried about, you know, or like at a supermarket or at the hospital, you're worried about risk of COVID coming back in the house, and everybody's all on top of each other. I mean, Black and Latino students, they're dealing with a lot this time around, and especially, you know, like if you're trying to go to school, you have uninsured households struggling, if somebody's sick, if your finances aren't solid, there's always a risk you don't have money to pay for Wi-Fi. So then, how do you do your homework if you don't have Wi-Fi, So, and you're stressed out, that's obviously something that's energy that's carried over to you. So it might be extra hard to be focused and motivated. So it's harder to finish lessons virtually. And there's a lot going on. And it's not even adding to the political atmosphere that the election is bringing, with protests and police shootings and of unarmed Black folks. I mean, just look at a video and you see a shooting. And for me, it's like, it's a trigger for anxiety. I know it must be a trigger for younger people as well. So, there's a lot of students that are dealing with a lot of stuff when it comes to what's going on just within this era of COVID.
Yeah, definitely. I know, like, along with all of that, there is still the mental aspect, like just your personal mental, whatever like you have going on inside of you, and trying to maintain positive vibes within yourself. I think that definitely also adds to all of that, because you're trying to keep yourself in line, then keep your situation in line, and then now you got to think about school and how some professors are working and whatever. And then, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a lot, and I know that Bloomfield College, there are counselors that are available. They will meet with students by the phone or video conferencing, um, and they will help students that need that. But I noticed just with my own son's school, there's a counselor that actually gets online with the students at least once a week, and she sits and asks them, during this little period of time, they give like a 40-minute time, ask kids questions about their fears, their concerns. My son's diagnosed with autism, and most of the students in his class are verbal. And I hear them talk about how scared they are of getting COVID and what do we do once we get back in the classroom, and all those questions that they may have. And um, it's different for young kids versus older kids, but still all those questions are there for college students as well. And just allowing students and kids to express themselves and provide to them some support, well, with whether it be a licensed counselor or a teacher that's able to just like give an ear and listen, if students are stressed out. And it's going to help with the learning process, because if you're not stressed out, then you are able to focus better. And I think that at least, my son's school system recognizes it, Bloomfield College recognizes it, and I think that all school systems need to recognize that in this era of COVID, it is essential that in order for a student to be successful, they need that kind of emotional and psychological support as well.
Definitely. Um, so I do want to dial back a little bit. um, so in South Africa, the school system largely revolves around where they come from, social class, and skin color. And I know briefly earlier you talked about how you kind of had similar experience, like in your time and going to school. But have you seen this in recent times with your, educational background with working as a teacher?
As far as inequities or systems put in place that are revolve around skin color, I have not seen that here in the U.S. I have experienced kind of racism growing up, as a student, um, where mostly other students were mirroring what their parents taught. And you can see that sometimes as you grow up within different educational systems, you move out to the suburbs and you might have different attitudes than you would find within an urban setting. But I don't see instances of racism that really revolve about systematic racism, as far as the educational system keeping people out because they don't have enough money, or keeping people out because they look a different way. I think perhaps some of the inequities come from the tax base and not having people with the kind of if you live in a neighborhood where people make a lot of money and they have public schools in that region or in that area, then the schools are better and they have a lot of stuff because the taxes are used to support that school system. But when you go into urban settings where it's not, where the tax base may be different, then you find that sometimes the school systems are not adequate, and students don't get what they should get. So I think that that's where we have in the U.S. That issue. I think that honestly, I don't know whether you've heard about the Poor People's Campaign. They are a group of people that Reverend Barber is kind of heading up, going around the country saying that this needs to be part of the national conversation, that it's not black and white, it's about economics here. And if people are able to make decent wages and be able to pay bills, and they can get decent jobs, a lot of this would change in terms of everything, in terms of just it would change all around. And I think that that's just something that's going to have to hopefully be addressed if there's a new president brought into the office after the election.
Right. Uh, to further kind of dive into different programs and different tactics that people are trying to use. So, a Department of Education report showed that in South Africa, less than a third of students finish grade 12 by the age of 18. However, Nkululeko helps bridge the gap for learners to be able to complete school from grade 8 through 12. Have you seen any organizations within the United States trying to mirror those same tactics for underprivileged kids or kids in urban backgrounds?
For sure, for sure. I know that I once worked as a volunteer, and when I was a college student, and right after I graduated for the STEP program. It's also known as the Science Technology Entry Program. It's a state program that helps students with workshops and tutoring to help them improve in science and mathematics. Now, I am no good in math or science. However, I was a good writer, and they recruited me to teach a summer class on newspaper writing and journalism for high school students. So I did that and helped students write stories and go interview people and things like that. Basically doing what I'm doing now, but a little less advanced because they were doing print. So we were putting together a print newspaper. And the program still exists today to help economically disadvantaged students who are interested in going to college. I'm not quite sure about what, if it's as extensive as it used to be because of state the state funding cuts and such. But it used to be where they were trying to help students figure out, where you want to go once you get out of high school. And the opportunity with the workshops is to encourage students to excel academically and motivate them, to figure out the possibilities of going into college education. So yeah, I do see that in the United States that they're trying to, that there are programs like that. And I wish that there were more.
Yeah.
I think that if, like I said, I really do believe that if we do see a change in administration this coming November, that I think we might see some of those things come back and more investment in that area. I just don't see that under a Trump administration.
I um I hope and pray that things do turn around in a lot of areas, because I think that if we strengthen the educational system itself, that could help so many people. Because I feel like if you think about it, in other countries and stuff like that, people don't pay for school at all. And I feel like you shouldn't have to pay for something that you need, just like healthcare and all this other stuff. But I'm just hoping that something works, something different happens, because we need more programs. We need a lot of things. And right now, we're getting somewhere, but we're not there. So, yeah. But so I do want to dive into the pandemic.
Oh boy.
How have you been dealing with the pandemic?
I really think that I've been taking it one day at a time, and trying to stay motivated, hone my skills in different areas that I know that I'm good at and make them better. And also just trying to be a good support as a professor for students who need it, and be flexible. That's what I've been trying to be this semester and last semester when we had to go on lockdown, because there are so many students who are dealing with so many more things at the same time that they're trying to do studies. It's not just, I got to study to do, like, I'm blessed. I have my little room cubicle that you see here. It's one little room that I can study in, finish my stuff. My son's in the other room. My husband's downstairs on on a Zoom call, like several Zoom calls today. Um, but I have my little space, my bubble. A lot of people don't have that. They are surrounded by noise and everybody on top of each other. If you got a 2-bedroom apartment and there's more than 2 bedrooms full of people that are in that space, it becomes difficult to concentrate and deal with all the issues. And grandma's sick and somebody's got to go get her medicine. And so, all the stuff that's added to that space. So I get why some students are like staying on campus, even though, for many people, they would say, well, why would you want to stay on campus in the middle of a pandemic? I get it, because you can at least focus on what you're trying to do versus having to deal with all the grandma, mama, brother, sister drama that's happening around you. You can focus. And the pandemic has put a lot of things in that space that you normally would have some peace and quiet. My son's was doing virtual learning all this whole time until up to Monday. And Monday they have a half a day where they have to go in with masks, socially distant. Everybody takes a temperature check. He goes in and he goes to school for a half a day. Now, half a day doesn't seem like all that much, but for me, those few hours where I can focus on like knocking out some papers and setting up classes and taking phone calls and doing all that, that helps a lot. But some people don't have that space. And again, like I said, I'm blessed. I don't have to be an essential worker where I got to go in every day and worry about somebody coughing on me or being exposed to something that I don't want to be exposed to. So yeah, the pandemic has been a challenge that I just trying to, like, this morning, just get up, figure out what we can do, thank God for the day, and do the best you can.
Yeah, it's definitely I think a lot of people are handling the pandemic really well in the aspect of like it works better for them to be online and stuff like that. For me, it's horrible because I am a person who I learn better in person. I need to interact, I need to see things, I need to touch stuff, I need to like really have a visual physical experience to be able to retain stuff. So with just being online, it's been like I have no idea how to figure out how to retain stuff and figure out how to pass classes without, interactions. And then you're dealing with people also who are just kind of like, well, deal with it. So, you got to kind of just navigate through all of that. And then you have whatever's going on in your actual life. So it has been very crazy. But I do applaud people who are just like, I got this. And that's that.
And that's one thing that I think that you may be grappling with when you have so many different classes and different disciplines and different areas. It's not like me where I know what I'm good at and that's what I focus on. So editing and audio and video and interviewing and things like that, I'm doing that constantly while I'm at home. So it's not like it's not something that's foreign. But if I was having to take a class on, I don't know, statistics and yeah, I don't know, this, the problems with voting and being able to take the statistical data and extrapolate it, I would be like, ooh, I would be very, very upset because I would want to talk to the professor like, look, I don't get this. Can you please explain this for me, please? And you don't have that opportunity if you don't have a Zoom class where you can at least like bring it up and say, look, this doesn't make sense. This makes no sense. I've read the chapter 4 times. It doesn't make sense. Right. And so I get it. I get that this must be really difficult for people who, when you're dealing with material that you're not familiar with.
Mm-hmm. And definitely different learning styles. It's just a lot that goes on. But um so Nkululeko has migrated to virtual learning and shipped necessary supplies to students. They have also incorporated mental and emotional support to students and staff. So I was gonna say, like, in what ways have you seen this in Bloomfield College? But I know you also brought up your son's school and how they have done that. So I feel like, do you think that this should be something that should have been implemented before, like prior, just as a regular necessity, or do you think that now having it is better?
Um, honestly, hindsight is 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's gonna say, yeah, it should have been here a long time ago. That they were, But the thing is that you didn't know what you were gonna get into. Nobody knew what this was going to be like. Nobody knew what kind of challenges it be if like the country shut down. What kind of things that would happen. And I think that you take it one step at a time. I mean, to figure out where you're going. Yes, it should have been put into place beforehand, but would it have been something that we needed at that time? I think right now you need this. So whether or not it could have been a help to people, I'm sure it could have been. Maybe people wouldn't have taken advantage of it because they didn't have the same kind of pressures. But um, now it is, and people are. So I guess that would be my answer.
I think that so far, a lot of different programs that I've been reading about have been trying to make sure that people are seeking out help if they need it in that kind of way. I know I recently interviewed um, Dr. Evans about the same topic, and she was saying about the services that Bloomfield offers, and I think that it's very necessary, especially at Bloomfield with the different backgrounds of a lot of the students. I think they definitely need some type of outlet. Um, so I think that, yeah. And I also think that people are definitely working very quickly as far as being able to implement these kinds of services in such short notice. So people have been doing pretty good with that bounce back.
Yeah, I think that everybody's trying to just deal with it day by day and figure out everything.
Do you think the pandemic has made it harder for students to stay motivated to do homework, classwork, or comprehend lessons virtually? And you can also apply this to your own students, like that you teach.
Um, I think it's harder for them to focus because of all the different pressures, as I said before, that they're dealing with. Because you've got many students that go to Bloomfield College. Some of them are commuters, and they're dealing with having to go home every day and deal with these things that are happening at home, which are often unemployment, which is often uh, not having insurance to cover things. If you got sick people in the house, multi-generational households where you have not just mom and dad and your sister and brother in the house, but you might have grandma and grandpa, you might have auntie. So I think it's harder for students to focus during the pandemic. However, I think that if the professors, like myself, take that into account and are flexible, not that we have to be pushovers, that you can't, you know, you're not going to do any of your work. You got to do your work. But being able to be a little bit more flexible than perhaps when we weren't facing these type of situations. I think it'll be helpful for the student. And it's helpful for the professor too, because believe me, if you're a professor and you have kids, you're dealing with a bunch of stuff too. I mean, for me, I have my son, when he was virtually doing his work, I have to be his one-to-one. What that means is I sit there during the time he's online and I watch while he's doing it so that he stays on point. Other than that, Nick gets distracted. He starts daydreaming or not listening, and I'm like, dude, wake up, get back there, so I have to constantly do that. Now, that means that time that I could be working on papers or grading something or setting up for my classes, I don't have that time. And then once he's off, it's like I get shot out of a cannon. I got to go right to the computer and work for hours. So I have my first job in the morning with him, and then my second job with the college, and then I have to be mama. So that's the third job. So I'm working 3 things going on at the same time. So yeah, it really is kind of a challenge these days to stay on point. But if you have you can persevere, you can make it through. You just have to schedule and just take it one day at a time.
Yes, I definitely think planners have never been used so much than they have been used in this time period. Planners and what is it called? Whiteboards, all that. Sticky notes. I know I use a bunch of them daily, just trying to make sure everything is kind of organized or organized enough. But you just never know.
Mm-hmm. Believe me, this little thing, this phone here, has been my constant companion that I schedule things, between doctor's appointments and this and that and everything. I have to kind of, I'm almost a slave to this thing because you got to keep up with everything because you've got a Zoom meeting with my son's teacher, and then I have a Zoom meeting with you, and then I have a Zoom meeting with somebody else, and then I have to make sure I get dinner on and don't burn the dinner, and let's make sure that all that going on at the same time.
Yes. Um, so as an educator, working in the school system, have you found that students of color struggle to connect maybe with you or other teachers in their lessons due to their backgrounds? Or did you have a problem connecting with your teachers when you were in school?
Um, it's funny. I remember you kind of folks posting this question, and I had to think about it. And what's interesting is I don't think that the students may have a problem connecting with teachers, but because I haven't had students tell me that they don't understand where I'm coming from, because I really strive to relate to them what's going on in the world. And I know when I was growing up and going to college, I often felt I didn't see a lot of teachers that looked like me or had the experience I had growing up, because I wasn't tremendously rich and I wasn't tremendously poor. I was somewhere in the middle, and not really middle class, but not really poor, but not really rich either. So I was kind of in that middle ground. So, I make a point to try to encourage students to do stories that connect to their lives and what's currently happening in the world. And I want to encourage them to be good storytellers, because their experience and their voice is extremely important. So I really think that it's important that and the instructors for the system be a reflection of the diversity that you see in the classroom. It's a healthy thing. I can count on one hand how many African-American female and male students I had in elementary school, in high school, and in college. That's sad. I only had a few, so less than 5. Okay. The educational system from top to bottom should support hiring Black, Latino, Asian, Indian, other ethnicities that reflect the student body. And I'm not saying that a Caucasian teacher they can't have a positive impact on students and to give them a different perspective, because I think that's important as well. I just think that having that added perspective by people of color who have similar experiences as your student body, that will have an added connection to enhance the experience for education, and that there should be something there said for that, and that the students will get a more enriching experience if they're able to see people that look like them, who come from backgrounds similar to them, and will, be able to relate to them. So that's, I guess that's where I'm coming from. So I, like I said, personally, I have not had students feel like that, I'm kind of a foreign person, that I don't relate to them. I think that we relate very well to each other, but I think that in some cases students have voice, at least here in Bloomfield College, that, they feel like sometimes they're not heard, or they're heard and maybe seen, but not, it's kind of like in a sympathetic way, but they really don't get it.
Yeah.
Am I getting? I hope I'm not. They're they maybe they. It's like reading about a recipe in a book, and you know the ingredients and everything, but you never tasted it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've tasted it and you've experienced that taste, you know what that's like when you get it.
Yeah.
And somebody can tell you all about what it tastes like, but if you've never really tasted it, and you can, oh, that must be really good, but you really don't know what that's like. And I think that that's, you don't know what it's like to take 3 buses to school every morning, or stand on the corner every morning and freeze your butt off and get to the classroom, and you're just exhausted trying to focus, and you walked in 2 minutes late because the bus was late, and the teacher's down your throat.
Right.
They've never had to deal with that. They've never had that. They don't get it. So I think that that's where I'm coming from. I think that if the faculty reflects the student body and what their experiences are, I think you'll have a better college, a better school system, period, because the students will be able to, they'll feel like they're connected. And I think that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants connection.
Okay. That kind of led into my last question about, like, how do you think the school systems can improve for students of color? And that kind of answers that. But I do agree that I feel like it's not hard to try and connect, or at least try to understand what students go through. I think it's all about wanting to do that. And I think if you're going to be an educator, if you're going to work in the school system, you have to be willing to do that. You have to get personal and be personable with the students in order to have a better outcome, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, this is a great conversation. I enjoyed it, definitely.
Well, my closing question is, did you learn anything today, or did you feel like you see things a little bit different or more clear than you did before?
Before this interview or before COVID? I think that I feel like, having gone through your questions, because I got a little bit of a prior kind of lowdown on what you might be asking. I had to sit and reflect about things, as far as my life and my life's experience. And I can see that I have learned, to be open. I think more open to different groups of people and their experiences, and trying to be able to, like I said, with students during this COVID time, is be patient.
Mm-hmm.
I think that patience with yourself too. I mean, I have to be patient with myself, because I'm an on time person. I'm trying to be on time for everything. That's kind of the way it was with, working as a reporter. You got to be on time. So when you got to slide to the left for 20 minutes here and a half an hour there, it feels like, and you have to remind yourself, like, you don't have to be, everything does not have to be perfect. Everything does not have to be just just so in order for things to work. And sometimes that not having it just so is the flavor that makes things better anyway. Because, I mean, seriously, you got to have, when you have that little bit of difference, and that's what makes it that makes it interesting. That was makes it, makes the painting more interesting and more engaging, because you have that. That's what makes that souffle taste a little bit better, because it has a little bit of extra salt here, a little bit of extra pepper. That's
Right.
like.
I definitely enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot about you, definitely in your background, and it puts things in perspective when you hear people's background in depth, more than what like you may hear, randomly in class and stuff like that. Um, so it's good to definitely dive in to your
Mm.
life and definitely talk about education, which seems to never get talked about as much as it needs to be. So, yeah.
Yeah. I had a great conversation. I enjoyed it.
Yes. Thank you so much. Again, I am Rain Russell, and this is WBCR Bloomfield College Radio. I hope that you all learned a lot about Nkululeko, about South Africa, about the United States, about Professor Dillard, and more. Thank you guys for tuning in.